say hello to the updated BMW X3. BMW likes to call it LCI, Life Cycle Impulse. And as with all updated BMWs, the grille has become bigger. So now it is a single frame grille. It's a little longer, a little more in your face. But we expect all updated BMWs to have more in your face grilles. Dare I say it, we're probably a little disappointed that the grills aren't stretching all the way to the ground. But that's the front. And because of that, BMW now have something polarizing at the rear as well. The tail lamp graphic. Now, when I started driving this car 3 days ago, I couldn't make up my mind whether I loved it or hated it. But after 3 days with it, I think this looks really cool and it cuts a really striking shape on the road. What is even cooler on this M Sport variant is the shade of grey. BMW calls it Brooklyn grey, but we know and love it as Nardo grey, and it turns a lot of heads. But how does the X3 drive? To keep it honest, we've got the Q5, and the Q5 is so similar to the X3 in terms of price, in terms of space, in terms of size, in terms of engine performance, everything. It's nearly identical. And that's why this comparison test is going to be interesting. This comparison test is of the two petrol-powered SUVs. And if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to stay notified for our videos. And now, let's get on with the driving. On the interior, nothing much really has changed. You now get the 12.3-inch infotainment screen. It is a touchscreen, and 12.3 inches is actually massive. And the entire CarPlay display, it actually projects on the full screen, so that is huge. Your maps, your audio tracks, everything is projected in super widescreen. You also get a 12.3-inch virtual cockpit. This is the standard design for all BMW virtual cockpits. It is nice, but my only reservation with it is that the tachometer, it swings anti-clockwise, not clockwise. It is at the edge, on the right edge of the virtual cockpit. So that's the one thing that I don't like about the virtual cockpit, but otherwise it looks cool. And this being the M Sport version, which is basically the body kit and the styling addenda, you also have the M badge on the virtual cockpit. To operate, BMW's OS really works very well. So you have this big controller out here on the center console. It is also touchscreen, so there are different ways of controlling it, and you always find everything easily. Plus, it has wireless CarPlay, which is a really cool thing. So you don't have ungainly wires hanging around in the cabin, and that is a plus point over the Q5. On the sound system front, it's got a Harman Kardon stereo system, which also sounds very good. The seats are very nice, comfortable, everything that the Q5 does, but in addition, the BMW, you can also adjust the under thigh support, and that honestly, it adds to the comfort, especially over long drives. The steering wheel, nice, meaty, it's got an M badge at the bottom, really puts you in the mood for some hustling. And the X3, it likes to be hustled. The X3, it has that typical BMW character, a sense of urgency, a sense of underlying sportiness. The X-Drive, all-wheel drive for instance, it is more rear biased, so when you gas it out of these corners, you can feel a slight rearward bias to the torque delivery, which actually makes it feel more dynamic, more sporty. And then of course, there is the grip. The ride quality on the X3, well, if you compare it with the X3 of the previous generation or 2 generations ago, it is so much better. You can drive it over all kinds of roads without a problem. And this is running the 20-inch wheels. These 20-inch wheels, for the first 50 early bird customers of the X3, they were offered free of cost, and standard is the 19-inch. But you can option the 20s, it costs around 2 lakh rupees. Would I option it? I think so, because it looks very cool without that much of a dip in the ride comfort. Of course, the ride comfort is not as good as the Q5. It is a little more busy. You can feel a lot of the road undulations, the surface changes, the small potholes, all of that is communicated into the cabin. It's not unlivable. Let me be very clear about it. It's actually pretty comfortable for 20-inch wheels on run flat tires. But the Q5 definitely has the edge in terms of comfort. In terms of that calm nature, the Q5 really is far more relaxing and more easy than the X3. But when you throw it around corners, the X3, it really does come alive. So BMW, they don't call their SUVs, they call them SAVs, Sport Activity Vehicles. And as far as sportiness goes, okay, this side of a Porsche Macan, the X3 is the most involving, engaging, and entertaining to drive. The steering has more feel, there is more front-end bite. You can actually throw it into bends, it grips tenaciously. There is a bit of body roll. Obviously, this is an SUV, SAV, and it has to deliver on ride comfort, but it's not exaggerated. And then it has active dampers. You have the sport mode out here. So you have the standard sport, you have the extra dynamic setting in the plus, and that firms up the dampers so you can chuck it into corners with even greater velocities, and it grips, bites, holds. You can hear a bit of squeal from the tires saying, okay, take it easy. This engine also, it sounds pretty sporty and happy to be caned. It even has active flaps in the exhaust. That's something that we noticed while driving up here early in the morning while following the X3. And of course, when you follow an X3, especially at night, that tail lamp graphic, it took some time for me to get used to it, but that really is a striking graphic. And now you don't really focus so much on the kidneys. Those tail lamps, they really are very distinctive. Polarizing, but it makes people turn around, notice it. And of course, this grey. Now, this is not called Nardo grey, it's called Brooklyn grey, but what a beautiful color. Last Sunday, while driving around in some of the posher parts of Pune, a couple of Lamborghinis were on a Sunday drive. I don't know why they do it within the city, but anyway, they were on a Sunday drive, and all of those Lamborghini guys were actually looking at this grey X3 because this is a really striking color. And from the outside now, it is a spitting image of an X5, not the current generation X5, but it's as big as the earlier generation X5. And it looks as imposing, as striking. This is a very attractive SUV. Really cool looking. Of GLCs, there are plenty now. So a GLC doesn't really turn heads. The Q5, it's a very mature, sober design. The X3, it's extrovert. That's what BMW's designers are going for, and they've really hit the nail on the head. It's an extrovert driving experience, and it's an extrovert to look at. Little rowdy, in fact. The 30i moniker, that is misleading because this is not a 3-litre engine. This is the 2-litre turbo-petrol engine. It makes 248 bhp, 350 Newton meters of torque, 0 to 100, 6.6 seconds. And on the road also, it is quick. It loves to be revved. It sounds good when it is revved. It's an overall more dynamic offering in this class. And of course, for an Evo India reader or viewer, this is what you're looking for, right? The 20-inch wheels, they also have more rubber, so that's why they grip much better. There is so much of bite. You really can't play around with the X3, at least not with 248 bhp. It's got an overabundance of grip, which is a good thing because it makes it much safer. Even if you go into corners at massive speeds, it grips, it bites, it holds it in place. Oh, look at that. But yeah, if you want to take it a little easy, then the X3 is slightly busy in terms of its ride quality. This being a BMW, you also have the Sport Plus traction mode, so it lets you play around a bit, but honestly, there is just so much of grip that there is no wagging the tail on the X3. It doesn't have enough power to overcome the grip of 20-inch tires. Be a little over-enthusiastic with the throttle, and even then, it doesn't move around. There's too much of grip. But you can feel the rear bias of the X-Drive powertrain. You can feel that slight movement at the rear. That slight movement, that slight squatting on the rear, you can feel it in the X3. So it does put you in that mood to really give it the beans. The Q5, until it was discontinued when the transition to BS6 happened, was one of the best sellers in Audi's range, and now it is back. It's only been a few months since this facelifted Q5 was launched, and it is still fresh. Of course, in the facelift, not much changed in terms of the styling, but the one thing that really made it such a good seller has continued, and that is the ride comfort. Now, with this facelift, the wheel size has gone up to 19 inches, obviously to keep in with the class standards, but I'm going over a speed breaker now, and it goes so well. Despite the 19-inch wheels, the ride comfort is spectacular on the Q5, and that makes it such a relaxed, easy, and effortless car to drive. It just soaks up everything in its path. The comfort is really good, really good. There's also excellent noise insulation. You can barely hear anything off the road, and this is a bit of a broken patch, so it does that relaxed motoring really well. But it can also do some enthusiastic motoring. Now, this 2-liter TSI engine, a little bit more torque, 370 Newton meters of torque, and it is a little quicker to 100 kilometers per hour, 6.3 seconds versus 6.6 on the BMW. So this is quick if you really gun it, and it also has adaptive dampers. So it's got the drive select mode here. Right now it's on comfort. Now I've stuck it in dynamic, and that of course makes the 7-speed twin clutch automatic gearbox a little more enthusiastic, and of course a twin clutch automatic is a very quick shifting automatic gearbox. Now it is even more enthusiastic. The engine responses are a little sharper. The suspension is better tied down, so there's less of that floatiness, and it can really hustle. The grip is extremely good. Of course, Quattro is one of the defining traits of Audi SUVs, and Audi, they really know how to make Quattro work, how to make four-wheel drive work. You have plenty of modes also. So you have the off-road mode when you want to take it on a rutted off-road trail, though not many will really do that with a luxury SUV. But then you have the on-road modes as well. And this is the new generation of Quattro. So in the interest of fuel economy, it mainly is front wheel drive, and drive is only sent to the rear when it detects that it needs it. So in terms of the fuel efficiency, it is more efficient than the BMW, and that is something important because both are only petrol. So fuel efficiency in this day and age is a bit of a priority. But that also means that despite the competence of this platform, the MLB Evo platform, and the competence of the dampers and everything, but the Q5, it doesn't have that handling spark. It can do everything. It can grip really well, it can go really well, but it doesn't engage you like the BMW does. So when you throw it around corners, there is of course grip, there is bite, chucking it around a bend, and it grips actually very well, but it doesn't feel as enthusiastic. For instance, there is no rearward bias to the torque split on the Quattro drivetrain. It's not like when you gun it at the exit of the corner, you can feel the drive going to the rear. That's not there. it feels slightly inert. So throwing it around bends, it's a lot of grip. Honestly, there is a lot of grip. But you also want maybe a bit of communication, which the Audi doesn't deliver. The BMW delivers it. Take things a little easy and you get to appreciate the other qualities of the Q5. The interior quality, for instance, it is unimpeachable. Everything works exactly how it is supposed to. It's now got this larger 10.2-inch screen. It is a touchscreen. You don't have a rotary knob, but then the touchscreen is enough because you can control everything, and it retains physical buttons for the aircon, so that is easy to use. I like these buttons out here. You don't have to dig into the menus to actually find what you need. The virtual cockpit is done really well. The tachometer, it swings clockwise exactly how I would want it. You can also reduce the size of the dials and get a huge navigation display. But that is something that all manufacturers actually need to work on, because this navigation display is not your Google Map display when you connect your phone via CarPlay. This is the inbuilt navigation, and Google Maps works better than any inbuilt navigation. This is not a criticism of only the Audi, it is a criticism across the board with all manufacturers. But anyway, that's probably the next iteration for CarPlay. What Audi need to do is actually give this wireless CarPlay. Right now it is wired CarPlay, so then you have this wire hanging around out here, and you don't really have a good enough notch to put your iPhone in, especially if you got a big ass iPhone. So that's something to work on in the next iteration. But otherwise, the quality, the layout, everything is really good. There is a good amount of space, a lot of light and air, big panoramic sunroof. Everything exactly what you want is all there. The earlier Q5, it also sold on the back of the Q7 success. And now we have a new Q7. We have this updated Q5. So that actually should help entire Q range volumes to grow. And I think it's a good thing, because this SUV, it does things a little different from the BMW. BMW caters to the more sporty type. The Q5, it caters to maybe the more sensible type. The one that uses it all the time and has to account for the fact that our city roads are not the best, not by a long shot. So in a place like Mumbai with its roads, and especially if you drive it after the monsoons, the Q5 will be more sensible, more practical, and more relaxed. This is one of the few SUVs that you can actually drive it in dynamic mode, which is their sport mode, without your head starting to hurt. In the BMW, sport mode is a bit too aggressive, so after a while you just take it into comfort. You don't bother with sport because it's too jerky, too on edge. Whereas this dynamic is actually very well sorted. You can drive it in dynamic mode all the time. I'm a little embarrassed by this verdict because it is just so cliched. Now, if you want an SUV that is more sporty, the X3, definitely that should be the one for you. But if you want something that's calmer, more comfortable, the Q5, it does a damn good job. And that is the crucial difference between these two. As for the styling, well, this is something that you have to make up your own mind, because styling is personal. I really can't comment on it. I'm veering slightly towards the X3, especially because of this color. But again, it is a personal preference. And of course, there is another rival in this segment, and that is the GLC. But the GLC, the petrol, is not as powerful as these two, and that's why we don't have it here. But if you want a sporty yet comfortable and of course stylish SUV, you can't go wrong with either of these two. U-turn.